The Galactic Council convened in its grand chamber, filled with representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy. They had watched over thousands of worlds, dictating peace, war, and everything in between. They saw themselves as the stewards of the galaxy, deciding the fate of those who fell under their gaze. And today, their gaze had fallen on humanity. A Zalarian, a towering reptilian figure, leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. Humans! A curious species. Recent developments show they've finally reached interstellar capability. Pathetic, really, considering how long it took them to even leave their planet. Laughter echoed throughout the chamber. The other representatives joined in, each more dismissive than the last. The Insectothrax delegate, its many eyes glinting, added, "They're fragile. Short-lived. What could they possibly offer? They're still squabbling over petty land disputes on their own planet." Another voice chimed in, this time from the sleek, silver-skinned Lorith delegate. "They rely on combustion engines and basic fusion reactors. A child's play compared to what we harness. Their biology is inefficient. Their intellect, limited." The Council had seen this before. Countless species had risen to interstellar prominence only to be swiftly brought to heel. It was a simple formula: exploit their resources, integrate their technologies, and if they resisted, crush them. Humanity would be no different. The Zalarian delegate spoke again, this time addressing the entire Council. "Let's not waste time. We extend them an invitation to join the Council under our terms, as always. If they accept, we take what we want. If they resist, we show them the price of defiance." The Thrax representative hissed in approval. "They won't resist for long. They can't afford to." One of the smaller races, a timid voice from the VAR delegation, hesitated before speaking. "Humans, their history, it's different. They are not like others we've encountered. They have a violence in them, a history of war and survival that—" "Enough!" barked the Zalarian. "History is irrelevant. In this council, might determines right. They will bow, like all the others." The VAR representative fell silent, its concerns drowned out by the collective confidence of the council. They were certain of their dominance. They had every reason to be. The council had never faced an enemy they couldn't subdue, and humans would not be the exception. "Send the message," the Lorith delegate concluded. "Extend the invitation. Let's see how they respond. This will be over before it even begins." The message was sent, and to the council's satisfaction, humanity responded. Diplomatic pleasantries were exchanged, and initial negotiations began. The council was patient. They always were. They knew humanity would eventually realize its place in the galactic order. The resources Earth offered would soon be theirs. Yet beneath their arrogance lay ignorance. They saw humanity's progress as slow, backward even. They saw Earth as a quaint planet, filled with primitive beings who had barely scratched the surface of space travel. But what they did not see, what they could not understand, was the resilience woven into the very fabric of human nature. They saw technology, but not ingenuity. They saw biology, but not the unyielding drive to survive at all costs. The Council was confident. They had defeated more advanced species before. This would be no different. After all, how could a species still reliant on basic nuclear power possibly resist the combined might of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy? But the Council's greatest flaw was its hubris. It was their fundamental misunderstanding of what made humanity dangerous. They believed their technological superiority was all that mattered. They believed that sheer force and intimidation would bring any species to its knees. Humanity, though, was something else entirely. For centuries, they had thrived in chaos, overcoming odds that would break others. They had fought against themselves for dominance, shaping a history soaked in blood, sweat, and war. Their entire evolutionary path had been carved through conflict and survival, and now, they stood on the brink of an interstellar stage, ready to confront an enemy that didn't understand the rules of the game. The Council did not expect resistance. They saw humans as no different from the countless other species they had bent to their will. In their arrogance, they believed they had all the time in the galaxy to subdue this new player. But they had miscalculated. Humanity had seen this coming. They weren't naive enough to believe that the Galactic Council's invitation was made in good faith. For years, Earth had been quietly observing, preparing for the inevitable day when their presence on the interstellar stage would be noticed by the greater powers of the galaxy. Every decision made, every technological leap, had been guided by the unspoken understanding that they would not remain hidden forever. In an underground war room, Earth's leaders, scientists, military commanders, diplomats, gathered. A holographic projection of the Galactic Council's message hovered above them, the tone condescending, the intent clear. This wasn't a partnership offer, it was a thinly veiled threat. "The Council thinks they can intimidate us," said General Kavanaugh, his eyes hard. "They believe they're dealing with primitives who don't know how the galaxy works. They've made one fundamental mistake," Dr. Hassan, the lead scientist, added. "They're thinking we're playing the same game as everyone else. They don't understand how we think. We've been studying them for years. We've kept ourselves out of sight, but we've learned. They have no idea what we're capable of." Humanity had mastered more than the Council knew. Publicly, Earth had portrayed itself as a species still grappling with the basics of space travel. But beneath that facade lay a reality far more advanced. Quietly, humanity had developed technology that far outpaced what the aliens expected. Quantum computing, artificial intelligence, advanced propulsion systems, and biologically enhanced soldiers. They had been preparing for this day. "We'll play along with their diplomatic charade for now," said Sarah Reynolds, Earth's top diplomat. "But we need to be ready when they make their move. They won't come with open arms. They'll come with fleets. And when they do," Kavanaugh said, "we'll be ready." The Council's plan had been clear from the start. The initial talks were just a formality. They would offer Earth a place in the Council, demand resources, technology, and compliance. They would test humanity's boundaries, see how far they could push before resistance broke. But humanity had no intention of bending. Months passed as the talks continued, but the Council's true intentions soon became evident. Alien companies began buying up Earth's natural resources under the guise of trade agreements. There were reports of mysterious disruptions in Earth's infrastructure, power grids failing, communication lines being cut. These were no accidents. They were tests. Probing strikes to see how humanity would respond. But each time, the response was swift and decisive. Sabotage efforts were thwarted almost immediately. Hackers attempting to breach Earth's systems found themselves locked in digital traps, their networks crippled before they even had a chance to gather valuable information. Human engineers had anticipated these moves. They had built countermeasures into every piece of technology they developed, knowing full well that the Council's first attack wouldn't come with guns, but with quiet subversion. "They're underestimating us at every turn," said Dr. Hassan, reviewing the reports. "They think we're just reacting, but in reality, we've been ahead of them the whole time." The Council continued its provocations, sending scouting vessels to the edges of Earth's territory, testing human defenses. But each time, the ships were intercepted by human patrols, never making it far enough to report anything useful back to their superiors. Earth was on high alert, its defenses prepared for the inevitable escalation. "We can't let them think they've got the upper hand," Kavanaugh said in one of the many strategy meetings. "We've let them test us, and we've proven that we're not going to fold. Now we need to show them that we're willing to strike back." The decision was made to launch a covert operation, one that would send a clear message to the Council without sparking an all-out war. A team of highly trained operatives, equipped with Earth's most advanced technology, infiltrated a Council shipyard on the outskirts of the solar system. Their mission was simple: cripple the Council's ability to deploy reinforcements. The mission was a success. Several Council ships were disabled before they even had the chance to leave port, their systems scrambled beyond repair. The Council, for the first time, realized they were dealing with a species that wasn't just capable of defending itself but could strike back with precision and ruthlessness. Back on Earth, the mood shifted. The population, once uncertain about their place in the galaxy, began to sense the tide turning. News of the Council's failed provocations spread, and humanity's confidence grew. They had stood their ground, refusing to be bullied, and now they were beginning to push back. But the Council wasn't finished. They had underestimated humanity, but they still believed they could bring Earth to its knees with sheer force. The diplomatic talks stalled, and behind closed doors, the Council prepared for a more direct approach. Fleets were being readied, soldiers equipped, and plans drawn to make an example out of humanity. Earth's leaders were not blind to these developments. They had anticipated this escalation. Diplomatic overtures were no longer useful. The time for talking had passed. Now, it was about survival. And humanity, after centuries of internal conflict, was uniquely equipped to handle it. "We've been preparing for this day for longer than they realize," Reynolds said, her voice firm. "They think they're about to face another passive species that will crumble under their might. But they don't understand what we're capable of. They've seen only the surface, but they don't know the depth of what we can do." General Kavanaugh stood, his face grim but determined. "Let them come. When they do, we'll remind them that we're not just another race to conquer. We're the ones who fight back. And when it's over, they'll know that we don't lose." And so, the waiting game began. Humanity's forces were on high alert, their advanced technologies hidden, ready to strike when the time was right. The Galactic Council believed they had humanity cornered, but in reality, they were walking into a carefully laid trap. The Council thought they could intimidate, manipulate, and dominate humanity as they had done with so many others before. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed they were dealing with a species that would accept subjugation. What they didn't understand was that humanity had never been interested in playing by anyone else's rules. Now they would learn that humans weren't just survivors. They were the predators waiting in the shadows, ready to pounce. The Galactic Council had miscalculated. Their arrogance led them to believe they could intimidate humanity with a show of force. They had assembled one of their most powerful fleets, led by the Zalarian warlord Torek, a name feared across the galaxy for his brutal efficiency. The Council's plan was simple: send the fleet to Earth's borders, make a show of dominance, and watch humanity bend the knee. But the moment the fleet arrived, they realized something was wrong. The Earth they expected to see, a planet scrambling in fear at the sight of their warships, was nowhere to be found. There were no frantic signals begging for mercy, no panicked broadcasts. Instead, Earth's defenses were already deployed, positioned strategically as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. It wasn't fear they were seeing, it was preparation. Torek, aboard his flagship, snarled as reports came in from the outer perimeters. Human ships, smaller and seemingly less advanced, had positioned themselves in tactical formations, blocking the fleet's intended routes. They should have been easy targets, and yet, every attempt to breach their defenses was met with swift retaliation. Within minutes of the fleet's arrival, the first human counterattack struck. The Council had underestimated human ingenuity. Earth's warships, outfitted with quantum hybrid reactors and AI-driven targeting systems, moved with a precision the alien fleet had never encountered. Missiles and energy weapons that the Council's ships could usually shrug off were now tearing through their shields as if they were made of paper. The Council's fleet, designed for overwhelming force, found itself outmaneuvered. Human ships weren't simply reacting, they were anticipating. Every alien strike was met with a counter-strike, every maneuver with a counter-maneuver. Torek's frustration grew as he realized his fleet was being toyed with, corralled into positions where they were vulnerable to human firepower. And then the real assault began. The Council had believed that humanity's technological capabilities were rudimentary, but they hadn't accounted for Earth's hidden advancements. Human scientists, knowing they couldn't match the sheer numbers of the Council's forces, had focused on innovation in areas the Council had long ignored. Cyber warfare was one of them. The first signs came when the Council's communication lines started going dark, cutting off the fleet's ability to coordinate. What began as minor disruptions quickly escalated into full-blown chaos. Human hackers had infiltrated the Council's systems, using AI-generated algorithms to break through firewalls the aliens believed were impenetrable. Fleet command systems were corrupted, navigation systems overridden. Ships turned on their own, firing at Allied vessels as their systems were hijacked. The Council's forces found themselves battling not only human ships but each other. In the middle of the carnage, Torek struggled to regain control of his fleet. He had been in countless battles, crushed dozens of worlds, but never had he seen such precision, such ruthlessness. It was as if humanity had anticipated every move he made before he even made it. His warship, the pride of the Council's armada, was now locked in a desperate fight for survival. Human forces exploited every weakness. They knew the Council relied on brute strength, on overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers and superior firepower. But humanity had studied the weaknesses in their technology, their over-reliance on central command, their complacency. Earth's forces struck with surgical precision, targeting the Council's supply ships and communication hubs. Without those, the fleet's massive warships were crippled, unable to coordinate or resupply. For every alien vessel destroyed, another would fall, not from human firepower but from the Council's own incompetence. Systems overloaded, ships collided, and the fleet that had been sent to subjugate humanity found itself in disarray, unable to keep up with the relentless human assault. Torek, watching his fleet disintegrate around him, knew he had been outplayed. But pride ran deep in his species. He would not retreat. He ordered his remaining ships to regroup, to make one final push against Earth's defenses. His flagship, armed with weapons powerful enough to devastate a planet, would lead the charge. He would make humanity pay for this humiliation. But as his fleet moved forward, something happened that Torek hadn't anticipated. Human forces didn't retreat. Instead, they surged forward. Earth's warships, smaller but faster, broke through the alien formation, closing the distance between themselves and the Council's capital ships. Torek watched in disbelief as human boarding teams, equipped with advanced exoskeletons and weapons designed for close-quarters combat, stormed his ships. The Council had always assumed that humans, with their fragile biology, would be no match for their superior soldiers. But these weren't the humans they had expected. These were enhanced, augmented with cybernetic implants, their reflexes faster, their strength greater. The aliens were unprepared for the brutality of the human assault. They had never seen a species fight with such relentless aggression, such willingness to do whatever it took to win. Torek's flagship, the pride of the Council, fell within hours. Human forces stormed the bridge, taking control of the ship and its systems. As the last of his crew was subdued, Torek stood alone, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend how this could have happened. The Council had always been the dominant force in the galaxy. No species had ever posed a real threat to them. And yet, here he was, defeated by the very species he had once mocked. In those final moments, Torek realized the truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They weren't the fragile, primitive beings the Council had thought them to be. They were something else. Something dangerous. They had a capacity for violence, for survival, that went beyond anything he had ever seen in his centuries of conquest. As he stood there, surrounded by human soldiers, Torek couldn't help but think of the warnings he had ignored. The VAR representative had tried to warn them, but they hadn't listened. The Council had been blinded by its arrogance, by its belief that technological superiority was all that mattered. But humans had proven that there was more to power than technology. There was adaptability, cunning, and a willingness to fight to the very last breath. For the first time in his life, Torek felt something he had never known: fear. And as he was led away, he couldn't shake the one thought that echoed in his mind: humanity wasn't just a new player in the galactic game. They were the apex predators. And the Council, in their arrogance, had just provoked them. Word of the defeat spread faster than the Council could contain it. What had been intended as a show of power had turned into an undeniable catastrophe. The invincible fleets of the Galactic Council, long the enforcers of their will, had been routed by a species they'd considered insignificant. The rumors began as whispers, but soon the entire galaxy knew the truth. The Council had misjudged humanity, and they had paid the price. Back at the Council's headquarters, panic began to set in. The representatives of the various species argued, scrambling for answers. How had this happened? How had a species as primitive as humanity managed to dismantle one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy? They couldn't have done this alone, one representative insisted. There must be some unknown ally helping them. A hidden force we haven't accounted for. But the truth was inescapable. No outside force had intervened. This was humanity's doing, and the Council had no idea how to handle it. Every strategy they had relied on for millennia, intimidation, overwhelming force, manipulation, had failed. And now, the humans were in a position no one had expected them to be in, one of strength. Humanity's leaders wasted no time. They knew the Council was reeling, and they took full advantage of the moment. Diplomatic messages were sent to the Council, not in the tone of supplication the Council was used to, but with clear terms. The humans were no longer interested in joining the Council. They were demanding recognition as equals. And it didn't stop there. Reparations were demanded for the attempted invasion, for the destruction caused, for every slight the Council had inflicted on Earth. The Council, caught off guard by the boldness of the demands, debated endlessly. Many of the member species were outraged at the idea of treating humanity as an equal. The very notion seemed absurd to them. But there was no denying the reality. If they refused, they would face an escalation they were not prepared for. Are we really going to bow to these upstarts? A Zalarian delegate snarled. We cannot allow them to dictate terms to us. But the fear in the room was palpable. Humanity had already proven it could stand against the Council's might. The losses in the fleet had been staggering, and their technological advantage had been called into question. Could they really risk another conflict? The cost had already been too high. The Lorith representative, usually one of the most arrogant members of the Council, spoke in a subdued tone. We've already seen what happens when we underestimate them. Another direct conflict could fracture us completely. We must be cautious. Caution, a word that had never before been uttered in the halls of the Council when discussing any species outside their own circle. It was a stark reminder that the balance of power was shifting. The Council had believed themselves untouchable for so long that they had no contingency plan for a species like humanity. They had expected submission, not defiance. The debate continued for days, but eventually, the Council had no choice but to capitulate. They sent an official statement recognizing humanity's sovereignty and their place in the galaxy, offering reparations to avoid further escalation. But the damage had already been done. The Council's reputation had been shattered. Other species, long subjugated or intimidated by the Council, began to take notice. If humanity, a species the Council had deemed weak and primitive, could stand up to them and win, what was stopping others from doing the same? The cracks in the Council's authority were starting to show, and rebellions began to spark in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. For Earth, this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven its strength, and now they had a new role to play. No longer were they the newcomers to the galactic stage. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they made it clear that they would not be pushed around. Human scientists, who had once been working in secret, now stood openly at the forefront of intergalactic research. Earth's technological advancements, once hidden to keep the Council unaware of their true capabilities, were now being shared with other species looking to break free from the Council's grip. Alliances were formed, and humanity, far from being isolated, became a central figure in a new era of galactic politics. But even as humanity rose, they never forgot the lesson they had learned from the Council's arrogance. They knew that power could corrupt, that dominance could lead to complacency. Earth's leaders vowed never to make the same mistakes the Council had made. They would be prepared for anything. The Galactic Council, now weakened and fractured, struggled to maintain order. Many of their member species began to question their place in the Council. Why should they continue to serve an organization that had proven itself vulnerable? The once unshakable institution was crumbling from within, and the fear that had kept so many in line was gone. Humanity watched this unfold with careful eyes. They had no intention of becoming the new oppressors. Earth's leaders understood that their survival had come from their ability to adapt, to outthink their enemies, and to stand together. They had no interest in ruling the galaxy. Their interest was in ensuring that no one else tried to rule over them again. And so, as the Council's power waned, humanity thrived. They became known not just as survivors but as strategists, as innovators, and as the species that had turned the galaxy on its head. They were the ones who had shown the rest of the galaxy that the old order could be challenged, that the powerful could be brought low if they allowed arrogance to blind them. The Council, now a shadow of its former self, could only watch as humanity's influence grew. The species they had once mocked, the species they had believed would be easy to dominate, had changed everything. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive, their ability to adapt, and their capacity for calculated, decisive action. And in the end, that had been the Council's greatest mistake. They had forgotten the most basic rule of nature: never underestimate a predator. The galaxy would never be the same.